Hello, and welcome to a video that asks you to question what you think you know about life, death, spirituality, spiritual awakening, identity, and the nature of reality. Ramana Maharshi had his initial awakening at the age of 16. This experience would shift his perspective on being itself completely for the rest of his life. At this young age, he became one of those who completely saw through the illusory nature of reality and saw the eternal, changeless consciousness that the fleeting, impermanent, seemingly solid physical is merely projected upon. It was an understanding that made Ramana Maharshi realize that the root of suffering is our wrongful identification with that which is transient, such as the body, our thoughts, behaviors, likes, dislikes, opinions, beliefs, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, even with titles and material belongings. It was an experience of total oneness, bliss, and pure awareness, but also one preceded by an inner turmoil that shook him to the core, and the crucial decision to face the turmoil instead of trying to push it down or distract himself from it. This experience didn't come after years of spiritual practice or deep meditation, but rather in a very ordinary setting. One day, without any particular trigger, Maharshi was suddenly gripped by an intense fear of death. It wasn't a vague or passing thought, but an overwhelming, visceral sense that he was about to die. Unlike most people, who might try to distract themselves or seek comfort, Maharshi decided to confront this fear directly. He lay down on the floor, fully surrendering to what felt like the imminence of death. Instead of panicking, he turned his awareness inward and began to investigate what exactly it was that would die if this were to actually happen. What followed in those few moments would reveal the essence of what he later taught for the rest of his life. As Ramana lay there, he realized that the body was destined to die, and even the mind, with all its thoughts and emotions, could not last. He realized that the body, emotions, and thoughts were impermanent aspects of his being, and thus could have nothing to do with who he really was. As he looked deeper, he found an awareness that was untouched by death, an ever-present consciousness that persisted regardless of the body's fate. This shift of attention from the external and mental to the formless presence allowed him to transcend the fear of death, revealing a fundamental truth, that our true essence is eternal and beyond physical existence. It was an awareness, a sense of being, that persisted regardless of whether the body was alive or dead, an awareness that he shared with everything in existence. In that moment, Ramana saw with absolute clarity that this awareness, the self, was his true nature, and it was eternal. This realization wasn't intellectual or theoretical. It was a direct, undeniable experience, and what followed afterward was a life that appeared to be one of total peace, joy, and acceptance. What Ramana Maharshi grasped during this spontaneous awakening was something incredibly significant about the human condition. For most of us, our sense of self is tied to the body, our thoughts, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. We live our lives in constant identification with these fleeting aspects, and because they are temporary, we are plagued by fear, especially the fear of death. We cling to the body and the mind as if they were the totality of who we are. Even those of us that know we are more than the body and brain often don't think, feel, and act as if we knew this. Instead, we continue to get sucked into our ego identities, little worries and dramas that have nothing to do with what and who we really are. And in a deeper sense, that's okay. It is just what happens in that particular moment, nothing more, nothing less. Ramana's experience revealed the fundamental misunderstanding. The true I, the real self, is not the body or the mind, but the underlying consciousness that witnesses everything without being affected by any of it. What can be understood from Ramana's awakening is that human suffering largely comes from identifying with what is transient and impermanent. The body will age, weaken, and die. The mind will be filled with constantly changing desires, fears, and endless thoughts. But underneath all of that is a stable, unchanging presence, the self, which exists beyond birth and death. Ramana's realization points to the fact that liberation, or freedom from suffering, is not about escaping the world or avoiding pain. Instead, it is about seeing through the illusion that you are the body and the mind, and realizing your true nature as pure awareness. This insight does not demand anything. Neither does it necessarily change anything about one's outward appearance. The personality may go on as before, and there will be at least as much affection for loved ones as before, probably more, but it will come from a deep knowing of everything's fundamental unity, and that any sense of separation is an illusion. We tend to perceive the world through the lens of duality. There is me, and there is the world out there. But in Ramana's experience, the true self is non-dual. It is not separate from the world. Everything arises within the field of consciousness, including the body, the mind, and the entire universe. From this perspective, the boundaries we draw between ourselves and others, between life and death, between the inner and outer, are seen as constructs of the mind. The reality that Ramana glimpsed is one where these distinctions dissolve. There is only one, undivided consciousness manifesting in countless forms. The person who wakes up to this fundamental nature of reality will still have the experience of being an individual. He or she will just no longer be identified with all of the illusory baggage that is attached to this experience, such as the already mentioned thoughts, behaviors, likes, dislikes, opinions, beliefs, and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. This individual will know that there is no fundamental difference between him or herself and everyone and everything else. Another key insight from Ramana's awakening is the understanding that the fear of death, which so often dominates human life, is based on a misunderstanding. Think of what it would mean to have no fear of death, because you know that, on a fundamental level, you are safe, since nothing real ever can be threatened. How would that affect how you approach life? What would you do that you don't do today? How would your priorities shift? Maybe nothing would change, maybe everything. The point is that it would be completely up to you to decide, from this expanded perspective of who you are and what the world is. We fear the end of the body and the mind because we mistakenly believe that this is who we are. But once you realize, as Ramana did, that you are the awareness behind it all, death loses its grip. The self is eternal and formless, untouched by the passing of the physical world. In this way, the nature of reality is far more vast and mysterious than the ordinary mind can grasp. It is not bound by time, space, or even death. To realize this is to step into a new way of being, where the dramas of life no longer hold the same weight because they are seen for what they are, temporary movements within the unchanging self. What Ramana Maharshi's awakening teaches us is that our deepest nature is not something we need to attain or acquire through effort. It is already here, always present. But we are so caught up in identifying with the fleeting aspects of existence, the body, the mind, the roles we play, that we fail to recognize this simple truth. His experience serves as a reminder that the peace and freedom we seek are not somewhere in the future. They are right here, in the stillness of the present moment. All it takes is a shift in perception, a letting go of the idea that we are these limited, separate beings, and an awakening to the reality that we are the eternal self, the pure consciousness that holds everything. In summary, Ramana Maharshi's first awakening at the age of 16 revealed the timeless truth that our true nature is not the body or the mind, but pure, loving, peaceful awareness. This insight into the human condition suggests that most of our suffering comes from misidentifying with a false identity and what is temporary and impermanent. By realizing the self as infinite consciousness and our fundamental oneness with being itself, we can transcend the fear of death and the illusion of separation, uncovering a deeper, more unified reality that is always present. This understanding not only transforms how we see ourselves, but also how we perceive the world, other people, and the nature of existence itself. This understanding changes everything without demanding anything. At its core, it's totally unrelated to our interactions with physical reality, and it's not about giving up the sense of individuality. What it is about is the recognition that God looks out through our eyes all the time, and that our oneness with the Creator is all there is forever. It's a knowing that this identity, with all of its aforementioned baggage, that we've construed around this sense of individuality, is illusory, and that we therefore have nothing to defend, and nothing that we have to be afraid of losing. This was at least what Maharshi saw in his initial awakening, and what he then spent his life teaching, while seemingly living out his life in a state of inner peace. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.